Good morning and welcome to today's session, Ergonomics in Agriculture. My name is Kristen Hoffman, and I am joined by my coworker and friend, Laura Veldhuizen, and we'll introduce ourselves further in just a minute. Workplace Safety and Prevention Services is delighted to have you in this session today. If you are not familiar with WSPS, it is a not-for-profit organization that supports employers in Ontario, including those in the agriculture sector. Our organization offers health and safety consulting, training, and a variety of other resources, some of those with focus on ergonomics and agriculture, and Laura and I will be sure to highlight those in this session. This session is held in collaboration with Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers. OGVG has been a partner with WSPS for a number of years, and this session has been designed for their members. On that note, content within this session will focus upon agriculture and even more so on Ontario greenhouse vegetable operations. Laura and I welcome you to share your questions and thoughts through the session using the mechanisms in this platform, which we will provide instruction on in just a moment. And in particular, for those who are OGVG members or operate greenhouse vegetable operations, please provide us with your insights through this session. It will improve the quality of this session and perhaps future sessions as well. As mentioned, my name is Kristen Hoffman. I am a consultant with WSPS, positioned for the most of my schedule within the Niagara region. And in this region, as you may be very well aware, there are many greenhouse structures. Many of those do contain flower products. However, there are those with vegetable products. In my years with this organization, I have been spending more of my time within the agriculture sector and many of those greenhouse operations through consulting and training support. That said, some of my time as well is within the portfolio of ergonomics, whether within agriculture or our other operations across the province. And Laura has been a strong partner with me on a number of those projects over the last few years as well. And Laura, I will welcome you to introduce yourself now, if you like.
Thanks, Kristen. So I'm Laura Veldhuizen. I'm one of the ergonomists with WSPS. I have been with WSPS for just under 2 years. We may as well call it 2 years. However, I do come from many, many, many years of private consulting before joining WSPS as an ergonomist. So I'd like to say that I've seen so many different workplaces and met so many different workers and employers, and has really am passionate about getting into those workplaces and helping people out and finding solutions and identifying hazards within the workplaces that are MSD related and ergonomic related. I did grow up in the Chatham area, so I'm very familiar with greenhouses and agriculture side of things. And my ergonomist side of me has brought me into manufacturing, service sector, along with the agriculture side.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura. A few tips for our participants before we start into the content of the session. For your audio, it is recommended to use computer audio. There are other methods available, although quality may not be as high. If you do have available a set of earbuds or headset, use what will provide you with the best quality of sound and experience. If you do have other devices, we hope that you are able to be present within this session to participate. So if you are able to mute. For this session to participate, we will have a few methods, one of those being the chat, and I will point out that location in just a moment. real-time contribution in the discussion. Please do share your questions and thoughts in this space, and Laura and I will be sure to attend to that content. Note that all of the messages within chat are viewed by all of the participants, and there may be a tag with your name as to how you did log into the platform. This session has been set with the settings for all mute other than Laura and I, so chat will be your method to catch our attention where you need. To use that chat, you may be very familiar with this platform already, but to reinforce, across the top of your screen likely is where you will find these apps or tabs. Chat is available as a chat bubble with the word chat, and once more, to provide real-time participation messages throughout the session. If you wish to change the size or orientation of windows within this platform, you are able to adjust your view through the options in the More app or tab across the top of your screen as well. Within those More options, full screen will come up in the menu for you to select if you wish to expand the presentation itself. Laura and I will have a few polls for you through the session as well. When we do launch the polls, it will open a window likely over top of the presentation slide on your screen where you can contribute your answer and click submit. Once you do click submit, you are welcome to close or X out that window, and you are able to view the poll as well as responses within the chat pane too. The safety connection provides us with an opportunity to connect virtually with each other, whether representatives from the agriculture sector, neighbors who also have greenhouse operations, as well as with WSPS. It provides you with an opportunity to exchange your best practices, recommendations, suggestions from your experiences, as well as ask questions and gather insights not only from WSPS, but the peers who join you within this session. Our topic for today, as mentioned, is ergonomics in agriculture. Through this session, we will focus upon the agriculture sector and even more so on Ontario greenhouse vegetable operations. Jobs in agriculture can be physically demanding. Certainly within the sector in general and specifically within greenhouse operations, from the point of planting through to harvesting, packaging, and shipping our products, there are high demands upon our workers to perform those tasks. This session will provide you with an opportunity to collaborate with your peers, and for Laura and I, the opportunity to share with you some of our experiences and resources for ergonomics in agriculture. Our first poll for you. Of these options, what best describes your workplace? And as the poll arrives on your screen, you are able to select multiples. And if there is not a specific response that fits your operation, certainly in the chat, we welcome you to share what is it then that you might be growing under glass, or if you are outside of the greenhouse vegetable subsector in agriculture, what is the commodity? Or perhaps if you are outside of the agriculture sector but do have interest in that sector, I welcome you to submit. Interesting. We have some varieties within greenhouse, agriculture, and perhaps some others even outside of agriculture. Awesome. Thank you. And if you have not yet, I welcome you to check that poll within the chat pane and submit your answer. Okay, some general knowledge development. Cucumbers, peppers, tomatoes make the list. Mushrooms, strawberries. Strawberries a few times. Love it. Some flowers, perfect. Annuals, and again, some further general knowledge as well as poultry. Perfect. Thank you so much for that. Certainly for those who are within the agriculture sector, whether it is floral, poultry, or otherwise, where Laura and I do share some of the thoughts around specific hazards and controls or solutions for musculoskeletal disorder hazards in this session. We welcome you within the chat. Still please to contribute those examples that are reflective of your workplace as we go. Through this session, we will provide some awareness on the topic of musculoskeletal disorders, in particular, the hazards and controls for these hazards that we will refer to as ergonomics or the solutions. We will be sure to present examples in agriculture and in particular from some of the studies and resources collected over the years, some of the examples that are very much with focus upon greenhouse operations and even further on greenhouse vegetable operations. Rounding out the session, we will share with you resources, and our coordinator for the session will follow up with you with an email to the contact that registered in the session with those variety of resources. So we welcome you to make note of any of the content within the presentation, links that you may be able to access within the presentation, but do know that our coordinator will share with you those resources to keep in your collection as you go forward. I will welcome Laura to continue here.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. So we'll start today off by chatting about what MSDs are, or musculoskeletal disorders are. So in general, the musculoskeletal system is the soft tissues in our body that make our muscles move, or that make our bones move. Sorry. So muscles, tendons, ligaments, the nerves, the discs in our spine, anything that is kind of coming in contact with the bones or making them move. So an MSD, or musculoskeletal disorder, is an injury to those tissues. Now, what's interesting about these injuries is they're accumulative or chronic sort of injury. It takes a long time for them to come on and for our bodies to actually notice that they are injured and that that damage has been there. So it'll build up, right? We are doing our daily tasks, no problem. We're going to heal from that. Eventually, it catches up with us, and that's when our body kind of says, enough, right? We've hit that threshold, and that's when we start to experience discomfort. So any of you who are trying to kind of do a root cause analysis and get down to the bottom of that and put your finger on an exact date as to when that injury occurred, you know that that's very difficult to do. So generally, when we're kind of digging into this, we go, when did you notice the discomfort? And the worker will probably kind of think back of like, well, it was fall, or we were doing this sort of task within the workplace, and trace it back that way, not necessarily be able to say it was Tuesday afternoon at 4 p.m. So it's very difficult for employers to be able to trace back exactly what that exposure was and what that task was. So it's very difficult to delve into. Why are MSDs such a big deal in workplaces? Well, 44% of lost time injuries in Ontario workplaces are a result of MSDs. And even digging further into statistics, this 44% actually comes right down into the agricultural sector also. So it's a very interesting number to kind of carry across sectors and timelines. It seems to want to stick with us, this 44%. So that's a really big amount. When you kind of separate all of the different kinds of injuries that could be in workplaces, for this one to be worth 44% of those. To the first point on this slide, in general, MSDs cost Ontario workplaces 1.2 billion per year. And in pulling out some statistics just with respect to agricultural sector, we are looking at almost $7 million annually, looking at lost time injuries as a result of MSDs. So it gets very costly, right? Having workers away. And part of this is the length of time and severity of these injuries. The longer it takes for those injuries to come on, the longer it takes for them to heal. So we could have workers off for months and months and months while they are recuperating from an MSD. Okay? So prevention goes a very long way when it comes to any workplace injuries. However, really, when we're looking at MSDs, that's really important. So there are a variety of MSD injuries that can really cover anywhere within the body, right? So we have um, bursitis, tendinitis. So itis essentially means inflammation of that tissue or that body part, right? So tendinitis is inflammation of the tendons, okay? Bursitis, inflammation of the bursa, that cushion within some of the joints in our body, okay? And this is just a few. These are some of the typical ones that we tend to hear of from kind of workplace reporting of MSDs. However, this is not, a complete list by any means. Some very basic signs and symptoms of MSDs within workers are here on the slide. So pain, the stiffness and swelling, numbness and tingling, so kind of having to shake out your hands every now and again, just doing that general back stretch or kind of stretching out the wrists, tenderness, right? Just kind of, oh, that hurts, that aching, and just that general feeling of heaviness or fatigue within a certain area of the body. Right? So those are just a few, and again, it's not a final list by any means. So if you can kind of notice workers kind of experiencing some of those issues or experience those yourself if you're completing tasks, that can be an initial warning sign that an MSD is kind of starting to creep up on you. And really, it's the prolonged or repeated signs and symptoms where you really get those red flags and warning bells that we need to take further action, get some treatment, and get some controls put in place to stop that exposure so that they can recuperate. Okay, so we have a second poll for you. And what Kristen and I are curious about is kind of what areas of the body are affecting you and or your workers when we're thinking of MSDs. We've got choice of back, neck, shoulder or elbow, hand or wrist, or the lower body. Okay, interesting. And I believe this is select multiple areas also. So if you're noticing a flood of everywhere, you can select more than one. Okay, great. So what's interesting is these numbers reflect the statistics. Over 20 years now, we've been collecting statistics on areas of the body, the highest incidence of injury, and things like that. And the back has been leading the way for every year that we can pull stats on, especially when we are looking at the agricultural sector. So, we've got 36% of you saying back. That's not a surprise, right? And we'll get into kind of potentially why that is, and just thinking about tasks in general within the agricultural sector and especially greenhouses. It is not a surprise that back is one of the most prominent areas of the body that's affected. So a little background on musculoskeletal disorders and the hazards with respect to those. So in looking at how the three main hazards kind of work together, we have the Venn diagram. So we know that they can all kind of overlap and they will be present together or on their own. So the first one is the top one there, and that is force or weight. So essentially making our muscles work. So lifting, lowering, pushing, pulling, carrying, even gripping. Right? So holding on to various items within the workplace or even tools to keep them stable, anything to make those muscles work. It becomes a concern when we are expecting our bodies to go above and beyond what we are capable of, right? So lifting a heavier weight that we can handle, or gripping or holding something within our hands that we just cannot hold for that length of time or within that posture. Okay. So the next one is the bottom right. So that's posture. So working outside of what we like to call our neutral posture. And our neutral posture is essentially standing straight, hips, knees, shoulders, head, all in a nice straight line, and our hands in a handshake position. It becomes a concern as we get away from that neutral position, right? So working overhead with our arms up over our head, or doing a big bend to reach something at ground level, right? Or kneeling or crouching, asking our bodies to really adopt those awkward postures. Okay. And the last piece of the puzzle here is lack of rest or repetition, duration. How often we are asking our bodies to get into these non-neutral postures, or how often are we completing these forceful exertions? Okay, so we can kind of see that it can become a trifecta of hazards there. And obviously, if we're putting all three of those in together, it is going to be higher risk than potentially one of those there in general. We do have outliers there. Okay, so those are the three primary hazards for musculoskeletal disorders. What makes MSDs even more complex is secondary factors. Okay, so we've got contact stress. So using some part of our body to exert force, hold something. So using our hand as a hammer, resting something on our hip, using our knee to push something into position, putting pressure on the soft tissues in our body. So that's actually causing micro traumas to those tissues, which essentially causes contusions or bruising, right? And it changes the blood flow within that area. If we do not have proper blood flow to the muscles, then we can't use them as they should be used. Okay, so that can affect us there. Lighting can cause eye strain, and it can also cause us to adopt awkward postures, right? So thinking about trying to see something in a darkly or dimly lit area, we will be, leaning forward. We may be leaning down. We might be trying to reach out and grasp things a little bit so that we can see it easier. Okay, so that can cause some issues there. Temperature. Well, even though today is nice and sunny, it is cold out. So we know that our body kind of reacts to it that way, right? Tenses up, blood flows a little bit tougher. Conversely, working in the heat, we know that that can affect us also, right? Looking at heat stress, heat exhaustion, heat strain, and what that happens to our body when we are experiencing that. right? We can have muscle uh, cramps and strains, and it just makes our body work harder to either cool down or warm up. Vibration, again, affects the blood flow to the area, and can just affect the soft tissues that are being exposed, whether that's our hands or arms or our back if we are riding on equipment. Okay. Lastly, work organization or work methods. So, looking at shift work, how long are our work days? Are we getting breaks? Are we doing the same task day in, day out? Are we getting paid by piecework, or are we getting paid for a shift, right? Or hourly? That all plays a part in how we are completing our tasks, how we are organizing our work, how our workday looks, um, and just the frequency with how we are kind of completing some of those tasks also. Okay, so we can see how those tied in with the primary risk factors can magnify the strains and stresses on our body. One last piece of the puzzle here is personal factors. So, how our body reacts to being exposed to those primary and secondary hazards may be different for myself versus Kristen, right? So, looking at size. So, we know that workplaces and even just general equipment are designed for people of various statures, right? So, somebody shorter versus somebody taller, and how they're interacting with their workplace can be very different, right? Shape, do we have shorter arms? Are we reaching out over a belly, right? That can restrict how we are moving within our workspaces. Some of us are stronger than others. Some of us have greater endurance than others. Maybe we have a pre-existing health condition, or we have a previous injury to that area of the body, and now we are exposing that area to an MSD hazard. That may increase your risk for a workplace MSD. Okay. And the final one is skill and experience. There have been numerous studies out there that kind of show the differences between new workers and experienced workers and how they can adapt to being exposed to MSD hazards. Right? Some of the skilled and experienced workers have kind of found workarounds or what works best for them and their techniques and their bodies to help reduce that exposure to MSDs. Whereas newer workers who are still learning that their new job, that new skill, are maybe being trained by somebody who they're they don't match, right? Maybe different size, maybe different strength. So they have to find their own way to do it safely for them. So, in thinking about all of those hazards, right, the primary hazards, secondary factors, I'd like you to think about your workplace in general. And we're going to put a poll out here. And I'd like you to select any and all MSD hazards that are present within your workplace. I'm seeing a number of responses coming in. And this is not a surprise. Yep. So I'm seeing lots of posture and lots of that repetition duration, lack of rest piece. Yep. A little bit of force. But yeah, the primary ones jumping out there are the posture and repetition duration. Some temperature, which again is not a surprise if we are looking at greenhouses. We know that they can get warm through the summer, especially, and are even warm, all 12 months of the year. And then we have some others popping in also. Excellent. Thank you for your contributions. So we're going to launch a slightly different poll here. And it's going to be a space where you can just kind of type in a statement for us. What we'd like to know is, yes, you've just given us kind of your high level MSD hazards. What task in your workplace has MSD hazards? And if you have multiple, which typically you do, let's pick your high hitter or a couple of your high hitters. Okay, here we go. So I can see got some stuff in the chat too, which is perfectly fine. We can look at both here. So hand harvesting field vegetables, just pulling out, picking things up, shipping of plants, maintenance on large equipment, line work, lifting, moving pallets, yeah, produce harvesting, harvest aids, so using runners, line work, stacking pallets, packing, grating peppers, hand harvesting field vegetables. Beautiful. Just pulling them out again. Great. Packaging produce. Excellent. Thank you so much for your responses. Again, this is not a surprise. In conversations with OGVG and various members, we certainly have, the packaging piece jumping out, along with the picking part. So yeah, great. Thank you so much. I'm going to let Kristen jump in here and she can chat about egg examples of MSD hazards.
Thanks, Laura. So many of the tasks that you contributed in the last poll we see within the pictures upon this slide, truly. In greenhouse vegetable operations and truly in the agriculture sector in general, the jobs often require our workers to perform manual material handling tasks where we are lifting, carrying, and somehow moving materials through the workplaces, as well the reaching, bending, crouching, long duration perhaps of standing in place, or in some instances, even sitting in place. We acknowledge in some operations the incentives such as piecework for compensation might also have an impact on the likelihood of MSD hazards. In general, for operations that do have tasks involving piecework for compensation, the workers may increase their repetition or their cycle of performing tasks to get it done as fast as possible, to make as much money as possible. Certainly within greenhouse vegetable operations, as mentioned and reinforced by the poll, hazards are present in the planting and packaging, as well as shipping stages of the growing or production of your products. Training and twisting plants into position on trellises or other structures, pushing carts, pulling carts, gripping the plants themselves, the tools that might be utilized in process, as well as some of those manual material handling tasks during harvesting, as well as packaging and shipping. We note in general for the MSD hazards, the exposures to the variety of awkward postures, the bending, reaching, and stooping. In the pictures we have present here, we can see each of those have demonstration of awkward postures, whether in the picture on the top left-hand corner, where we have an individual bending over at the waist or back bending to the floor. Similarly, the picture just beneath the bottom left hand in the collection here, we have bending over at the waist or back bending. On the top right-hand corner, we have an individual working above that shoulder height. Albeit there will be instances where we are working within that strongest or most efficient range of our body, somewhere from about the waist to the shoulder. The plants, we hope, are high quality and do grow outside of that range, lower and higher for our production. But that does mean we have to reach then to the position of the peppers or cucumbers, most likely, that are a little out of that waist to shoulder area for our workers. And of course, our workers are going to differ in height. As Laura indicated, the personal factors of height and lengths of body segments are going to have some impact then upon the posture of our workers in order to complete the tasks. The bottom right-hand corner picture that we see here demonstrating some of that awkward posture as well as some force in that fine finger movement, the grip. Here we have manipulating or training the plants into position. We have to be quite gentle, so the force is quite low. However, each of those movements of finger to thumb or finger to finger are a bit tough on the fine features of our fingers and hands overall. Manual material handling. From the start through to end of the cycle of growing through to packaging and shipping, we are going to be moving items through the workplace. Repetition, the example here of training the plants. That said, there are many other experiences where we do have repetition, which will also consider duration of the tasks. How long might we be in that standing position or sitting position, or perhaps with that arm above that shoulder level? The repetition may be that we are reaching quite often. That duration is important to consider as well. How long are we in that position of that reach or bend or whatever that posture might be? Moving is a good thing. That is one of our controls or solutions for MSD prevention, moving our body through space, changing our postures regularly. Some of the challenge, though, with repetition and that changing of postures or our body within space is how often are we doing it? Or once we are there, how long do we have to stay within that position? Will fatigue the body, and especially as demonstrated in that Venn diagram, when we have multiple factors working together. It might not simply be the frequency of the repetition or the duration of the tasks, but if there is some force to go along with it, or our secondary factors that put further pressure upon our workers will increase those challenges. Some of those factors, certainly within agriculture, that may be secondary but are still prominent. Vibration, whether working with hand tools that expose our upper limb to vibration, or our whole body. Often, where we are working on mobile equipment, whether we are on the operator's seat of a piece of equipment like a forklift truck, or perhaps we are sitting upon a planter, the movement of that machine or equipment translates to the individual upon it. And that whole body vibration becomes a challenge for us within the sector as well. Temperature extremes. Our plants enjoy the warmth. to grow. We enjoy the warmth too, although at high temperature, it can become a challenge for the efficiency of the body and the recovery of the body as our workers are performing those tasks. Often it is the very high temperature that is a concern within agriculture, and in particular in greenhouses, because we need that heat for our plants and ultimately our products as the results. That said, we do want to keep in mind exposure to cold or the change from one temperature to another. If we do have field vegetables, as some have suggested, we are going to perform outdoor work. There may be some preparation of the field that occurs in the colder part of the season, protecting our workers from those temperature extremes, since the body likes to work at about a comfortable room temperature, somewhere in around that 15 to 20 or so degrees Celsius. Too cold, we constrict, contract, and shiver. Too hot, we fatigue. And truly, either of those extremes will have a result of fatigue upon our workers and a decrease in their efficiency and, of course, their safety. So, quite a number of the general MSD hazards that are present within the sector, and interesting to picture for yourselves in this moment where those tasks do lie. You have suggested picking, harvesting, packaging, shipping, some specific examples like the peppers themselves or the pallets themselves, where there may be some of these experiences of MSD hazards. As we continue in our discussion, we welcome you to share some of those solutions.
So that's a perfect segue, Kristen. We're going to talk about trying to fix some of those hazards that we just identified, right? So we've called them out. We said that they're there. Any job has MSD hazards present, even Kristen and I sitting in our office chairs, right? So we know that they're there. How can we put some controls in place to reduce that exposure or ideally eliminate it? So for MSDs or musculoskeletal disorders, the control is ergonomics. So it's essentially designing work tasks or environments for the human, right? Instead of turning us into pretzels and making us bend and reach and exert forces, we are making changes to the tasks, to the equipment, to the workplace itself, uh, to better it for the human interaction. So, nice simple way to say is fitting the work to the worker. Hey, there's lots of different definitions out there, but the nice simplified version there is in the green, fitting the work to the worker. Okay, so how how do we do that? How do we do that for any job and more specifically for kind of greenhouse tasks? So we want to ideally start at the top of this scale. So there's a varying list or hierarchy of MSD controls or any sort of hazard controls when we think of workplace safety. And ideally, we want to start with elimination, which is essentially just get rid of the hazard, right? Put something in place, change the job itself so that there is no way that the workers can be exposed to that. That can be difficult to achieve. So we work our way down the list here. So we've got substitution or engineering. So any of the ones in the green, some examples for those could be, working with lighter loads. So instead of working with a 50-pound bag of fertilizer or soil or anything like that, we are asking the suppliers to provide us with smaller bags or downsizing it ourselves without having to manually handle those larger loads. Okay. Or providing equipment to lift those loads, right? Lift assists, hoists, cranes, even just carts to help move things around instead of carrying them. Right? Those are all kind of engineering elimination controls. Okay, height adjustable work surfaces, right? So increasing the height of all of our grow bags and things like that. So instead of being on the ground, we have it on a table. And in an ideal world, that table can be adjusted in height for the worker or just the general worker population, right? So we can kind of dial it into that perfect working height for workers. We also know that those green ones cannot be achieved or might need a little bit of help. So we will go to the awareness and administrative piece. So awareness, posters, providing training, right? Direction on various safe work practices, right? Or just general MSD awareness. Okay, so this is how you achieve proper postures, or these are the postures we do not want to be working within, and how MSDs can occur. Having workers have that knowledge is extremely beneficial, and will help them make changes in their work practices to help avoid exposure to the MSD hazards that are there. And the bottom, this is our last line of defense, but PPE. And there is PPE out there for MSD hazards. So think of padded gloves if we have to have that impact on our hands or we are having that continued gripping. We can wrap handles of tools with various wrap to make sure it fits our hands better, right? Knee pads if kneeling has to occur, right? Whether it's worn on the knees or pads that can be set on the ground for workers to kneel on. Okay. Anti-fatigue mats or insoles for workers' shoes or boots to help provide that cushion between the hard surface that they're standing on. Okay. So there's lots of different controls that can be put in place within workplaces to help eliminate or at least mitigate the exposure to those hazards. So we've got a few different polls, kind of 3 in a row here for you guys that we'd like to get some more information from you. So we want to hear from you and what's happening in your workplace. So the first question I want to ask, and this is just kind of broad, what are some examples of some controls that you have in place for MSDs in your workplace? And this is going to be another word cloud. So if you want to put it in the cloud, great. If the cloud isn't working for you, the chat works too. Okay, so we have some anti-fatigue matting. We've got some ergo mats there, which is great. It helps with just the general fatigue of the lower extremity and even into the low back if it's continued prolonged standing and walking. Some knee pads. Okay, so that's indicative that we've got some kneeling or some crouching happening. Lots of mats. Okay. Limiting stacking height. Oh, I love that. I love that solution. Yes, we have to stack things up. However, it can only go to a certain height, right? So many bins high, or we have this line painted on the wall that we cannot exceed, right? Depending on how things are set up that way. Excellent, excellent. Ooh, rotating tasks. Beautiful. Frequent breaks when it's too hot. Excellent. Yeah. So we're kind of pulling in the heat stress side of things, which is super important to give that body some recovery time, right? Um, Limiting carrying weight. Excellent. Excellent. So yeah, we're only filling the bins so high, or we can only put so much in there. That's great. Power jacks. Yeah, great. So again, we're putting some mechanical assistance in there so that we don't have to have that human force coming from it, right? We're asking mechanics to do that. That's beautiful. Thanks so much. Oh, and I'm seeing in the chat here cart rails. So pushing harvest carts that ride on cart rails. Absolutely. So it helps with alignment and it keeps it clear, right? We're not having to push the cart on, maybe a bumpy ground or bumpy terrain. Job rotation. So taking turns being in charge of palletizing. Yeah, so we know that palletizing is a tough job regardless of what workplace we're in. So rotating them out is a good solution, an easy solution to implement, right? Um, the next ideal solution would be to kind of make that a little bit more mechanized or automated, right? But we know that that is a more expensive solution, which is tough to achieve sometimes. Beautiful. Harvester with conveyor. Yeah, conveyors are fantastic to move items around the work area, right? It saves that again, that manual interaction with the product. Perfect. Thank you so much for all of your contributions. Excellent. So those were some general ideas. Now, I want to know the good. What's working for you? What's awesome? What was one of those great implemented controls that just changed the way a task is being done? Workers are happy with it, employers are happy with it. What really made a good change for you? And maybe it's the same one. Okay. Yeah, so job rotation certainly helps, right? It just changes the strain on the body. Ergo mats. Okay, people really like that. Great. Okay. Yeah. So job rotation is relatively easy to implement, isn't it? So we're just going to kind of work our way down the line potentially. We're going to work through all of these tasks. It does involve the workers to become trained on a few different jobs, but that's good. That's good, right? It helps with just changing things up. So it helps with that mental awareness, mental strain, mental fatigue, right? Changing jobs throughout the day. We know that that's helpful to keep us awake and aware and stimulated and engaged, along with giving the different areas of our body rest, right? It's not just, okay, go sit for 2 hours, you're not doing any work. It's just, we're going to change what you're doing for that work. So, very helpful, especially if you're rotating from jobs that are requiring different areas of the body to have that increased load, right? So, we go from a heavy back job to maybe a heavy shoulder job instead, just to provide that built in rest. Okay, thank you very much. And last question that we'd like your feedback on in this section here is challenges. So, what challenges have you encountered for selecting and implementing controls for MSDs? What is kind of that Achilles heel, a hiccup, issues that you are encountering to get some of these controls in place, implemented, and embraced by the workers? Cost, huge letters, cost. Absolutely. It can be very difficult to implement some of these controls, right? Especially some of those green ones, right? The elimination or even the engineering controls, right? We want to get a big conveyor belt in. We want to get lift assists in. We know that that costs a lot of money. Right? Buy-in from workers, absolutely, absolutely. So, good solution to that is having them work along with you to get some of those solutions put in place, right? Have it be their idea or have them engaged in the sourcing and implementation of that control, right? If we have that engagement, they're more likely to embrace it and use and just go through with that control. Excellent. going to pull out the details to see if there's any other text there. Yeah, great. So unfortunately, this is across the board in any workplace. It's not just greenhouse specific or agriculture specific. I've encountered this in every workplace that I've entered to make recommendations for controls and try and get them implemented. So, it's a continued struggle, unfortunately. Thank you so much for your input on that one. I'm going to pass it over to Kristen to get a little bit more agriculture greenhouse specific.
Thanks, Laura. So in the next few minutes and slides, we will share some of the experiences with MSD controls. I want to echo a couple of points on the slides and polls that you have shared in the last few minutes too. The challenges related to workers, participation, dedication to those MSD controls or solutions in the workplace. To echo Laura, where we can and should involve workers from the hazard recognition through to the recommendation or suggestions of controls. You may have experiences with this in other topics in the workplace, or perhaps among your network out of the workplace. If it is the individual's idea, your partner or child, it is more likely they will comply or support the idea. That theme will hold true in any of our exposures. So encourage the contribution by workers, and it will increase that likelihood for the use of the MSD controls or the solutions that you have brought forward into the workplace. We acknowledge that some of these MSD controls are expensive, and whether it is the purchase or the time associated with its implementation, we want return on that investment. And in order to achieve that return and prevention, we need the use by the workers. So let's get them in sooner rather than later in that process of hazard recognition through to this point where we lie now at the MSD controls. The one other point that perhaps I will start with and end with, which is where I should, is the point to echo on rotation. It came up for your experiences as an example to manage MSDs and one that has been successful. I hope that it has been successful specific to MSD prevention, and perhaps it has been successful in that you now have workers with a broader or wider set of skills. That cross training to achieve rotation is good for the body. It is also good in that you have potential for coverage, where you might need coverage if workers who may not report into work for a day or a few are not present to perform the task. So I love when controls for any type of hazards, and MSD hazards in particular, support not only the initial purpose, but there's some greater good that comes along with it. And rotation may be one of those. We acknowledge some of the challenge in hiring, recruiting, etc. And so we are fortunate for some of the programs available in Ontario and Canada to support the agriculture sector. That does not mean it has removed all of the challenges, even for purpose of coverage during an illness, as an example. Cross-training, expanding those skills among our workers is good for a lot of reasons. So in the hierarchy now that I've jumped out of it for a moment, we'll begin with the examples of mechanical material handling, where we are able to integrate equipment to move the items through the workplace. That may involve conveyors, as shared as one of your examples for moving product. That might be during a particular stage, such as harvesting that was mentioned. It may be packaging, shipping, or exist in other areas as well. Even planting and movement of those products through the different stages or zones of the greenhouse. Conveyors become oh so valuable. Forklift trucks, common equipment, especially within our shipping areas of the workplace. Where possible, we can integrate this equipment for movement of materials such as the fertilizer or the soil that Laura had alluded to earlier. In many of the operations, we have large bales of soil now available with large pallet bale breakers, which removes some of that effort on the part of the worker then. The bale breaker is good, so too is the forklift truck to move that material into the bale breaker. Loaders, front end loaders on tractors, backhoes, or perhaps skid steers within the workplace to move some of that bulk material as well. When we are moving through the process of clean out or tear out, to move that material that has been collected out of the greenhouse using those larger pieces of equipment with the buckets to move rather than perhaps something a little more manual, such as carts and totes, which are valuable and we do have noted as a control as well. Here we have a couple of examples of our carts in a variety of the operations. Where we do implement carts, we want to ensure they are appropriate for the tasks, including the products or items that are going to move through the workplace. If we look for a moment at the cart on the top left-hand corner of the collection here, we want to ensure the capacity of the cart is reasonable for what it is being loaded with. It is maintained well in good condition, and that goes right down to the wheels, ensuring the wheels are maintained well and designed to be as efficient as possible, such as larger diameter wheels, which will decrease some of that effort or force upon the workers for pushing and pulling the carts. Steering or turning the carts as well, consider what mechanisms would be appropriate upon those carts and its wheels to ensure it is efficient within the workplace. And from a safety perspective as well, I'll mention the value of braking mechanisms. Ensure that there is a brake available, especially where we do have higher weights upon the carts or we have any slopes to cross over in the workplace, so that the effort of the worker is not to restrain the cart as it is a runaway. Also considering the material and again condition of the tires or the wheels upon the carts to ensure that the surfaces we are going to move those carts over are going to complement the wheels or the material of the tires well. If it is a pneumatic, and for any type of equipment, ensuring that it is inflated to the appropriate pressure. The cart that we see on the top right-hand side of the collection of pictures here to point out a couple of items. The design of the cart, certainly ensuring that it is appropriate for the task, in this instance, moving the containers or totes. This cart also has a handle attached. Ideal if that handle is positioned at a height that is going to accommodate most of our workers, or perhaps there is even opportunity for adjustable height handle. The totes themselves, handles upon the totes, or some way to couple or grip the hand of the worker effectively with those totes, especially as we begin to load and the weight of that tote does increase. And one other note, both from a safety as well as an MSD prevention perspective, how we seat or nest those totes upon one another as well. Consider in the design of the totes and inspect for their condition that they do seat or connect with each other well, so it does not become an unsecure load, which again would put some effort on the part of that worker to restrict or control that load as it does move through the workplace upon the cart. Other items to consider within the manual aspect of the work, beyond our carts and totes, the tools that we might utilize, such as tools for reaching or carrying items, and the height of the work surfaces. As mentioned earlier, if possible, the adjustment of the height of our benches, troughs, or tables to a point that is going to accommodate most of our workers, and even better if it can adjust to the individual. That may not be possible in some of our greenhouses on the wide scale of benches or tables that we do have installed, but considering what the reasonable height would be for most of our workers, and to keep in mind as our products grow in height, what adjustments might become necessary. The height of those tables, which is ideal at first set out of the products on the tables, might not be ideal as we hope it grows up in height and expands. A few more here within that theme of adjustability. And to echo this point, the beauty of adjustability is that we can accommodate a variety of our workers, whether that be related to height, which is often the focus, but also the distances or widths that our workers may need to work within. Here we have some examples of adjustability in the carts, platforms, benches, tables, or troughs, as mentioned a moment ago. Also, though, the picture we have here on the left, chutes, the chutes in itself being a control for moving the pepper from the plant through to the container or tote, or perhaps even a conveyor where it is going to move on to the next stage in the process of harvesting. The beauty of this example is that not only do we have the chute, but the chute itself is also height and length adjustable. So we can accommodate where the position of that worker may be to that plant as they harvest. So that reach distance or height can be managed most effectively. Alternative tools. And the example we have here might have to squint. Do not do that. We've talked about the challenge of having to look real hard at items. To describe to you, though, the picture on the right is a worker with a long-handled tool. So longer attachments or devices that allow our worker to remain in as close to that neutral position as possible, upright in this example, and still accomplish the task that may be at that lower height, at the floor or ground in this example. So whether it is slicing holes in these items for drainage or planting, or even picking up items, whether from a lower height or a height above. At my not so tall height, I on occasion do reach for that long-handled reacher to grab a hold of the light duty items that might be on that top shelf or that back shelf. Automation. It is so exciting each and every time I enter into a greenhouse, and albeit a number of those are flower in my region, as mentioned, in our vegetable greenhouses as well, to see the integration of machines to perform some of that very intensive demanding work upon our workers, such as some of those fine finger movements or the high frequency repetition tasks. So whether it is planting, transplanting, harvesting, or otherwise, where possible, to integrate the equipment or machines to perform that work, and then utilize our workers with their other skills to perform some of those tasks that might require some more creative thought or decision making. Robots as well, also exciting to walk into workplaces now, and in particular, a good friend as well as flower greenhouse in the region that has integrated robots for moving products through the greenhouses from one stage or zone to the next, as well as from the greenhouse through to the packaging area. Imagine, and I'm sure you have seen it in person anyway, but imagine a robot vacuum is a very good comparison of this piece of equipment to pick up and move around and about those items. While that may not be reasonable for many of the commodities within greenhouse vegetable operations during the growing stages, if we think ahead and thereafter, perhaps there are opportunities where we can have those machines move the items for us. And as we move through the hierarchy that Laura reminded us of earlier, we do arrive at the awareness and administrative controls. Now, these controls do have greater need for management and supervision to compliance, and of course, greater need for workers to follow or use the controls, which has been mentioned as some of the challenges. So to that point, if we do only rely on our administrative type of controls, noting that there are on occasion challenges for that worker participation or buy-in, this is going to put more demand upon our management and supervision to ensure that we are following these standards. That said, these standards are common and valuable as MSD controls or solutions. I'll start with the pictures on this slide for a moment, and I will include a thank you to operations that are in this session, as well as the broader sector who may have been participants in a project a while ago where we did focus on MSD prevention in greenhouses. And from that work came about with these pictograms. These are a couple of a number of pictograms that were developed to be used in workplaces to support awareness, ensure that reminder of appropriate postures or use of equipment. The top right-hand side, we have the positive pictogram to encourage appropriate lifting practices. The bottom left pictogram, although these may look like flowers, and they are, this may be applicable in any of our greenhouse settings where we are handling hoses, even cords, the position of those items upon the body. Now, there is a corresponding opportunity for improvement or no pictogram for each of these tasks as well as part of the collection. Working our way through the other examples upon this slide then, preventative maintenance, mentioned related to our mechanical material handling equipment and even our carts and dollies that we may have in the workplace, ensuring that we do have these items included in a preventative maintenance program so that they do work as efficiently as possible. And I'll add to this, as well, as strange as it may seem to comment upon lighting in a greenhouse, but certainly in the earlier or later hours of the day, depending on the time change, there may be instances where it is quite dim or dark in spaces in the greenhouse. So ensuring our lighting is also included in our preventative maintenance program so that the lights are available when our workers need the lights. There is some good MSD prevention reason as well as safety reason for that. We have discussed job rotation right at the start of the controls, but to echo it once more, not only the value in MSD prevention, but also that coverage and development of our workers if and where that becomes necessary through job enlargement, some additional or different tasks to the role, as well as rotation from one type to another. And then finally, what our pictograms reinforce: communication and training. Consider topics such as material handling, or safe lifting as it's often referred to, stretching, and general awareness about musculoskeletal disorders. What are the signs and symptoms? The individuals are likely to recognize those before it becomes obvious to others in the workplace. So ensure our workers are aware of what it may feel like if we do begin to develop an MSD, and the mechanisms or protocols in place to report, investigate, and manage those exposures. Those are some of the insights through the years of studies and resources related to MSD prevention or ergonomics examples that we do see within greenhouse operations, and in particular, where we are able, in greenhouse vegetable operations. With the information to this point in the session, from recognition of the hazards to the examples of ergonomic solutions or MSD hazard controls, what are your next steps? Perhaps it is to seek out those pictograms, request support from your network of other greenhouse vegetable operations to understand, well, what is it you do for job rotation? Perhaps some external support through consulting or training, or even reflecting upon your current state and acknowledging where you do have successful and valuable controls or prevention strategies in place, and maybe some of those controls that have been even greater than you might have realized at first, like job rotation. So I welcome you to share a few of your thoughts on your next steps with this information. Did it reinforce your awareness? Is there something new? Further resources that you may need or want to investigate, which will lead us to our next point in conversation. Some safety talks. Awesome. So a few of those examples, perhaps, such as general awareness, complementing your reporting process related to specific tasks in the workplace, perhaps manual material handling or safe lifting as safety talks. Perfect. I'll just pull out the details here for a moment. Good. Safety talks are strong, continued. So we have programs in place. Continue on the topic. Good. Good. Let's discuss some of the resources available that may support the safety talks and training and otherwise. Thank you so much for those thoughts on next steps. As you are reflecting and then moving forward with those next steps, Consider communication and training strategies, reinforcing those safety talks that were just mentioned. Reflecting on the protocols that you have in place for reporting hazards in general, injury experiences, and then in particular, MSDs and tracking that information. Are the details coming from a particular area during a particular season or task? Is it all over the place? Considering job enlargement and rotation, managing the MSD hazards through examples of the controls mentioned, in particular, considering the working heights in the workplace and where we may be able to adjust through the growing process or from one area to another in the workplace, reducing forces or the effort upon the workers where possible, even those points about maintenance and selection of the wheels upon our carts to ensure it does not increase the demand upon our workers. Preventative maintenance for our equipment, networking with each other, and we invite you to network with us as well. And considering ergonomics in the variety of aspects of your business, from purchasing or procurement right through to the implementation of new or different methods within the workplace. A variety of resources for you. And as mentioned at the start of the session, these resources will be shared with you by our coordinator following the session, as well as contact information. The examples we have here, including the MSD prevention website. This is a website that has been prepared by the partners in the occupational health and safety or prevention system in Ontario, which includes the ministry, Workplace Safety and Insurance Board, as well as the health and safety associations. Years ago, you may recall a collection of books on the topic of MSD prevention. Those books have become electronic with new and other information. The ministry also has a place on their website with focus upon ergonomics that may be of interest. The Centre for Occupational Health and Safety, although a Canadian resource, so keep in mind any jurisdiction references may not be Ontario specific, so much good information on a number of topics, including ergonomics. And one example from outside of our jurisdiction, but still so very valuable, is from the Centers for Disease Control in the United States. This document was developed a number of years ago, but is still valuable with examples such as those we shared here for MSD prevention. Simple solutions, ergonomics for farm workers. So the broader agriculture sector, including examples that will be valuable within greenhouses. And within WSPS, a variety of consulting resources, including no fee for service or free ergonomics walkthroughs with consultants or specialized consultants. If there is an area of focus for you or in general through the workplace, our consultants are available to support you in that way. Additionally, further services such as ergonomics assessments, physical demands descriptions, and even cognitive demands descriptions for your workers. Training on the topics of MSD prevention awareness, office ergonomics assessments, and a variety of other topics within the ergonomics portfolio. And a few of the resources on our website. We have an agriculture and horticulture safety center, a collection of resources with focus upon the sector, including on the topic of MSD prevention. Then we do have a general space within our website on the topic of ergonomics. Two of the examples that may be of interest here, a checklist to support inspection and evaluation of work in the workplace for those higher prevalence MSDs. And there is a fact sheet or agriculture safety topic on MSD prevention that might be nice to use in those safety talks as a script. A variety of posters and videos are available to you through the website as well. A short and sweet point to mention, there are not a lot of words on this slide, but there is a lot of weight behind the words. There is one other safety connection that has been developed in the series for OGVG and their members. That is mental health in agriculture. At the end of March, you are able to register in the same way that you did for this session. And that is the one last in the series for OGVG. But there are many other safety connection events that I welcome you to browse and join. And the other point to keep in mind, the Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training and Skills Development will begin their new year as of April 1st. And with each new year, we do often receive information about initiatives from the ministry. So do keep your eye on the ministry website as well as WSPS for communication about those initiatives, which may involve agriculture and or ergonomics in some way. With that, I welcome you in the chat. If you have any questions, please do share in this space, and otherwise, you will receive contact information for Laura and I if you wish to connect or follow up on any questions that you may have. I thank you so much for joining us during the session today. Laura, I thank you for your insights, and we hope that there is perhaps reinforcement of all of the good you have in place, or something new or otherwise that you have taken away from this session. Please do remain in touch through our contact information, and Laura and I will remain here for a few more minutes if there are any questions that do arise. And otherwise, I hope you have a very good day. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.